I learned what I learned from working on that album is if you're making scratch tracks for singers to write to, they don't like a lot going on in the record because it becomes difficult to write to because you start writing to different parts and so I made this CD of tracks and I gave the CD to Byron Stingley and I gave it to Joy Caldwell and Monique. Well, they all, when they sent me back, which tracks they worked on, which tracks they liked, they all wrote songs to this one particular track. But there was only one person who could win, and Monique won with Poor People. But Byron Stingley wrote Hate Won't Change Me to that music. And Joy Caldwell wrote What It Feels Like to that music.
Wow.
So I have them all singing their songs to what people now know as Poor People, to that backing track.
Wow. Wow. So today is January 27th, 2021. Who will we be speaking with?
Me? We're speaking with Quentin Harris. Well, you're speaking with Quentin Harris. We're not speaking with Quentin Harris. I'm Quentin Harris.
Awesome. Where were you born and where do you live now?
I was born in the Motor City. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. And I now currently reside in New York.
Growing up, what music did you hear around the house as a child?
That's funny. Growing up as a child, I'll just name off some artists that I was hearing as a child. Miriam Makeba, Makeba, Fela, Party Funkadelic, Prince, James Brown, the Bee Gees, Herbie Mann, it goes on and on. My parents were very eclectic musically, and I think that really rubbed off on me. I was very impressionable as far as music is concerned. Like I have a really musical family. We're not the Jacksons, but we're very musical family. My mother, she sang and she played instruments, and my father played trumpet, and my father DJ'd also. So I was always around music. Actually, my father said, as a kid, he would say to people in the house, like, "Oh, he won't talk to you unless you have a music note on your forehead."
Wow. And then talk to us about your introduction to music. Were you playing instruments as a child?
Yes. My grandmother, she played piano and organ in church. And music was always, like, for birthdays or for Christmas, they knew, just get him a record. Because that's all I wanted. It's like, and so I started actually playing piano at age 5. I actually taught myself. My grandmother bought a piano for my sister, and the age old thing. I want to learn how to play piano, but once you force a kid to practice and stuff like that, then they don't want to have anything to do with it. That wasn't my situation. My situation was I wanted to play, but my grandmother was so busy trying to make my sister learn, and I was young, so a lot of times people don't like to teach young kids because they think it's difficult. So they had like these little charts that you would put over the keys, like these little guides, and of course I knew my ABCs and I knew songs. I knew songs. I was reading at a really early age. So I knew songs, and like the show tunes like Annie and the chorus line and stuff like that. And so I would teach myself how to play, and by looking at the notes, because the notes had the letters on them, and they also had the notes that were on the keyboard. So I taught myself how to play. Um, and then a little bit later on, around about the time I was maybe in the fifth grade, um, we were cleaning out my father's father had passed away. We were cleaning out his apartment, and in the closet was my father's trumpet from high school. So I became fascinated by that. So I was already playing piano, and then I started playing trumpet, and I just excelled at both of those things. And I guess the rest they say is history. I guess one day I'll I have video of me as like 12 or 13 playing piano, and because my parents got tired of playing so much, they put the piano in my room. So I had an upright piano in my bedroom because it was far off from, like, their bedroom was down the hall. So there's like, oh, I could play to his heart's content. So that's basically my story as far as music is concerned, as far as playing instruments. That was my introduction to music as far as like playing. Now, making music, basically I got that bug of making music because I had an uncle who was a budding hip hop artist, and I was the kid that that could play. So they would take me into recording sessions with them, and I would play little bass lines and things like that. Now they were like 17, 18, and this was around the time of, like, Criminal Minded was out by Boogie Down Productions and stuff. It was around that time. And I'm like this kid, and I'm like in amazement of all these buttons and lights. I don't know what to touch. So it's like I was fascinated by that. And soon we started going more and more till I started saying, well, I think it should go like this, and you should try it this way. And I didn't realize what I was doing was basically producing. And then around the time I was in middle school, my aunt, she had a blues band called the Delta Children. And it was her on guitar and her husband on bass. And she asked me, did I want to play keyboards? So here I am. I said yes. Here I am, this 13-year-old kid in these sleazy dive bars playing. I wouldn't know not to be in those places, but that's where I cut my teeth as far as like live playing live with with a band came from. So that I kept doing that with her, and so I was playing her band until even until I graduated from high school. I was still playing in her band, but I started around the time I got out of high school. I started getting really, really heavily into hip hop, and all that stuff that you saw in the movie 8 Mile. I was a part of that scene, so I was, I knew Jay Dilla, I knew Eminem, I used to go to Maurice Malone's hip hop shop on 7 Mile and play trumpet on Saturdays because they would do freestyle on Saturdays. So then I started making beats, and that led to me one of my beat tapes getting in the hands of a guy by the name of Renee John Sandy in New York. And I don't know how he ended up with it. I don't know how he got it. And he was managing this group called the Masterminds. The Masterminds really liked some of my beats, so I gave them some of the beats. Then they were working on their next album, and they asked me, did I DJ? And I was like, yes. And they said, well, would you want to join the group? And I was like, okay, this is my out of Detroit, because around that time also I was interning at Michael J. Powell's recording studio. And Michael J. Powell, he was in the band Chapter 8, and he produced all of Anita Baker's Grammy-winning albums, the ones everybody remembers. the ones that count. So I was, I had my hands in all these different pots. And I think that those experiences play out into the music that I make now to some degrees where some people might not get where I'm coming from. Like, because I can do this one day and then turn around and give you something else. And that's just always been me, because music is music. Labels are what people give the music.
That's awesome.
And there you have it. I ain't gonna tell you what happened once I got to New York. You know most of it, but
no,
my early when I got to New York, so I went on. I was working at Satellite Records. So I worked at Satellite Records, and at that time, KO was working at Satellite, Tyrone Francis was working at Satellite, Ben Johnson was working at Satellite. It was like this whole, and I would come in every day, and I was still in the Masterminds, but we had a tour we were going to do. We were going to do a national tour. It was going to be us, the guys who are now known as Run the Jewels, LP, and I was on tour with them, and LG. We did this whole tour, and after the tour, I left the group, the Masterminds, and I still work at Satellite, but for some reason, I met this guy who was an A&R. His name was by the name of Marvin Howell. And Marvin Howell, he was managing a guy by the name of Steven Morales. And Steven Morales was producing Enrique Iglesias and people like that. And so I was always, I was very determined for people to see what I was doing. And so Marvin the fit wasn't right, because he was trying to get me to do things that were to me, I know when you're starting out and someone who's been in the business for a long time, they do what they call assess your talent, or assess your talent, or see how much we can, make this person jump through these hoops, or, it's all those different variables. And so he gave me this CD, and the CD had all these acapellas on it. And it was from Motown was the label. And they had this young artist, and they wanted like a Miami bass sound to this guy. And I listened to it, I was like, I'll do it, but why they keep trying to recreate the Jackson 5? There's only been one, and there's not gonna be, it's just not, you can't do it again. This is what I'm thinking. So I did it, and it never really went anywhere. But on that CD was all these India Arie. So still working at Satellite, I was notoriously late, because I have this theory that time doesn't exist, clocks do. And people look at me crazy every time I say that, but there was this song, Ready for Love. And every morning I would wake up before it was time. I would get up early before it was time, like 2 or 3 hours before to go to work. And I would just work on music. And I was working on that song, and I could never figure out what kind of feel I wanted to give it. And it was just it was stumping me creatively. So one morning, it hit me what to do with the record. And I was 3.5 hours late to work. I actually went to work 3 hours late. And but if I would have never went to work late from working on that record, it would have never gotten to Ben Johnson's hands, and it would have never gotten to Freddie Santa's hands, which got into Timmy Register's hands. And the rest, they say, is sort of history.
Wow. What a story. And what happened after that, after it got in everybody's hands?
Oh, yeah. After it got into, the song was Ready for Love, too. After Timmy started playing the record, and then all of a sudden, Freddie came in and was like, oh, Timmy wants to meet you. And this was the time when Daryl James was doing uh, remixes too. And he had me and Daryl James in his office, and he said, "You two got the hottest stuff out right now." And I'm looking at him like, "You only got one record with me. What are you talking about? What are you talking about, Willis? This is what I'm saying in my head." And so Timmy started to assess my talent, and he gave me all these records, and I still have the CD around here. It was, I know it was. He wanted me to go and see if I could recreate these records, these drum patterns. One was Elements of Life. Another one was Virgo. Another one was like basically I recreated these drum patterns and sounds and stuff that he couldn't tell the difference between the record and what I did, and I was fast. So, you know, I started doing the other acapellas that were on that CD. One was the one with Lathan, When Love Came In, and the other one was Good Man, and then there was a couple others. And there's lots of things that I've left out, but so I'm not about to bring a name into the story. That I had a friend who knew this guy by the name of Carmen Cacciatore. Carmen Cacciatore, he had a PR company that serviced the LGBT community for the music industry, and he knew me because we had a mutual friend in common, and you know he knew that I did music, and he said to me one day, he's like, "You know how much you like Indie Arie?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I have an artist. I have a remix project. It's on spec. We hate that word, but he's like, "Have you ever heard of Donnie?" And I said, well, "Of course, because I've been pricing his records every day in the store." And I knew the record. And so the song was obviously Cloud 9. And I did the record in 3 days. And I gave it to Timmy. Timmy played it 12 times in one night. And Maurice Bernstein was not interested in putting that record out until the demand for the record became insanity. And so then the record ended up coming out. And that, to a lot of people, is the record that people were introduced to me through.
Wow. Wow. What a story.
Yeah. I would say, thank goodness I keep a journal because I have a great memoirs. Because some of the stuff that happened to me, you can't make it up.
Describe house music in one word.
Music.
Unpack that.
Describe house music in one word. Emotion.
Explain that.
Everything has an emotion, and emotion can be, there's various different kinds of emotions. You can be sad, you can be happy, you can be angry. I mean, there's so many, and I think house music, not only just house music, but music encapsulates that. It's a way, I know for me personally, I speak through music. You know, it's like, as my father said, the music note on your forehead, he wouldn't talk to you. You know, it's like, so I really communicate. You can tell, like when I'm playing, actually, you can tell what kind of mood I'm in. You can really tell that's just how I communicate. It's easier to me.
Describe the moment when you fell in love with house music.
Wow. Well, I'll say this: the moment that I fell in love with the music that I didn't know was house music, because in Detroit, growing up, like what we heard on the radio, we heard everything from like the electrifying Mojo in Detroit. If people don't know, he was a DJ that, this is before Clear Channel and a lot of, where you could have a DJ was actually more than just a radio personality. He didn't have a playlist that the company told him to play these records. He would do Michael Jackson and Prince all night. He would play Rock Lobster and play early Detroit techno / electro and stuff like that. So I was hearing all this stuff at an early age. Twilight 22, Siberian Nights, all this, the Skinny Boy stuff coming out of New York. It was just this particular time in music that, like, I was hearing things like "Don't Turn Your Back on Me" and things. I was hearing these things on the radio, and it was just, I didn't know what to describe it as. It was just music that I liked, and so. But when the term house music came out, like, this is house music, I would have to say the moment, I always loved the music, but the moment that it really, really captured me, it was when MK, who's also from Detroit, he remixed the Nightcrawlers record. And I had never heard anything like that. And I was driving, they would have like mixes during the day on the radio. And I mean, Detroit has always been that city that, like, one of the news stations, their theme song was like Energy Flash. Television news, you're hearing, it's like, that's what it was like. So I heard this record on the radio, and I had to literally pull my car over on the road, and I was like, what am I hearing? Because it was nothing I'd ever heard like that before. And then, that parlayed me to, getting a job at a record store there and meeting people like Mike Huckabee, who actually hired me. And here's a really interesting story. I know I'm all over the place, but here's a really interesting story. When I was working at that record store in Detroit called Record Time, I was working in the dance department, but I was pricing records. And there was this record that had this interesting image on it. And, we can listen to the records. This was like sort of the beginning that you would go to record stores and you could actually give you a stack of records, you could listen to them. And so I put the record on, I was listening to it, and I was like, I really love this music, and I love this woman's voice. It's just so different and unique. I'm gonna work with her one day. It was Ultra Nate.
Wow.
And the album was One Woman's Insanity.
Wow.
As you say, they say, speak it into existence. It was just, so for me, being from, I initially came to New York to do hip hop and R&B, but the universe had other plans. But as they say, speak it into existence. When I was living in Michigan, I said, I would be happy having a job where I'm just around music. I could be sweeping the floors at a recording studio. As long as I'm around music, I'm fine. So I never stated, I want to be blah, 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 blah. So to me, music is music, whether it's house music or whatever. It's like, it's moving me. And so that's what it was. It's like, so doing the record Cloud 9 that became so popular, Sting International, he asked me, who played the keyboards and stuff on the record? And I said, I did. And he's like, he had brought me in to as a session musician because he was working on Shaggy's new album. So here it is, it goes full circle. And then while we're there, it's like, oh, do you make beats? I was like, yeah. So I pulled out stuff that I did 10, 15 years ago that, like when I was sitting in Masterminds, a lot of stuff. And Shaggy picked the first four beats on the first, when he first heard it. One was a song called, that he ended up becoming a song called Roadblock. So I produced that. So it was just all these things were happening. It was just surreal, and I was just caught up in the moment, and I'm still caught up in the moment. It's like I'm really fascinated by all the things that have happened to me, all the people who I've met, and the people who I continue to meet.
Wow. What's your take on the overall state of the music industry, excluding COVID?
Well, you mean currently?
Yes.
Currently, I really think that there's I really think that there's I've never been I'm never it's like, you know, I used to I used to read lots of message boards, and I've never been one of those people that, who am I to tell somebody who's in their 20s that what they're experiencing is not something that they're going to be talking about in their 40s and 50s and whatever. You know, I read this article that said people really stop uh, listening to new music or discovering new music around age 30, and that's where things become nostalgic. And when you start getting older in age, like a lot of things just start occupying more of your time. So I said, I get it. I said, I said, people who are in music, they're a little bit different because, you know, it's something that they do and they enjoy. Their ears are always to the ground for the most part. But as far as the state of the music industry right now, I have to say, I wish there was a little bit more emphasis on the music and less emphasis on, I know you probably heard this before. There's some people who are really good at Facebook and tweeting and YouTubing, but the music suffers. But I think the reason why those things are because I made this comment before, and I'm bringing this up. I made this comment before in an interview with Five Magazine. They asked me when I released the Sacrifice album, they asked me, how was the scene in New York City? I said, well, it's like an adult dog and a puppy. And people got mad at me because I said that. But it's true. If you've ever seen a puppy with an adult dog, the puppy is all this energy, and you know, they're willing to learn and this, that, and the other, but typically the older dog doesn't want to have anything to do with it. It's like, go ahead, dog, you bother me. When I feel like, don't complain about, you know, I've been to clubs where they brought in people like, I'll use Shelter as an example. When Shelter moved down to Varick and Van Dam, and when they moved to 39th Street, they had a hard time with the early part of the night because Shelter has always been an after-hours club. So people have this thing of showing up at 8 o'clock in the morning, or 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. So, but it costs money just to open that door and cut on those lights. So they had to be in, you know, the bar shuts at this time. So they had to, you know, make money. So they were bringing like a techno party, tech house party early, or this, that, and the other. And that's fine. But what would really irritate me, some DJs who I will not name, not Timmy, it's his house, he can do whatever the hell he wants. These guys, they would go on after like this tech house party, and because they would segue the party into the Shelter party. But instead of trying to turn these people onto something that they might not be into, they instantly change the BPM, change the music, so you know it's drastically, this is a different party. And I've never thought like that. I've always thought about, don't you want to bring other people in? Because if it dies with you, it dies. But, you know, I wasn't supposed to say those things.
Let's talk about mentorship.
It's exactly similar thing. The puppy and the adult dog. Some adult dogs, you know, they mentor. And mentorship is necessary. I read this article about Rick Rubin. He said you should always be mentoring somebody and have a mentor. And I really believe that. Regardless of whatever the relationship I have with Mr. Regishford, one thing I will say is that regardless if we don't click anymore, really, but I never felt like I couldn't still learn things from him. I never felt like, okay, I always felt like if we shine bright, both shine bright, we shine the brightest. It goes to that thing again. It was like, I don't, only person who I'm in competition with is me. I'm not in competition with anybody else because I know I want to make, because we all bring something to the party. So I've always been that kind of person that I enjoy collaborating with people. I always feel people have valid points and opinions, and everybody, first of all, music is subjective. Music, art, fashion is subjective. Some people like Kraft macaroni and cheese out of a box. Some people like it baked in the oven with 3 cheeses. Taster's choice. So, you know, that's why I've never been that person like, oh, that's totally awful. I'm not that person. It's just, I mean, I like what I like, but I'm always open to discovery and open to the way, different ways of people work or different, you know, because you never know. You can learn something from somebody who's 6 and somebody who's 65. So mentorship is really an important thing. Timmy was mentoring me. I've had many mentors of my life. Michael Powell was one, you know, Renee John Sandy was one. Jay Dilla taught me how to use the SP1200. You know, it's like I've had mentors over my career, and I've always been a very good listener to what people say. That's why I have this quote. I would say, a wise woman once told me, never be ashamed of what you like. Grace Jones told me that. So, you know, this knowledge, everybody has some form of knowledge. We're all smart and we're all idiots at the same time.
Let's talk about production. What's your approach to production? How do you get ideas? How does the process begin? How long does it take? How do you know when you're done? How do you decide if it's going to be an instrumental or vocal? Talk to us about Quentin Harris and production.
For the most part, my production, I get inspiration from a lot of different things. I'm being inspired from doing this now. I'm currently wrapping up this Rashawn Patterson project. And I've been, you know, some people, like I said, everybody's process is different. I will say for me, because I'm used to playing in bands and I'm used to, you know, I like the element of surprise. So if there's something that I do in a lot of my productions is when you think of dance music or dance remixes or things of that nature, there's always seems to be somewhat of a formula, and I never try to have a hard on for my production, especially if it's a song, because if the song is good, you don't have to do that much. You don't have to bring that much to the party. If the song is good, it can work in any kind of format. It can work in a house format. It can work in a drum and bass format because the song is the base structure. So, but I do realize that we have some people who may be musical elitists, or I would never dance to Britney Spears, or I would never dance to this artist. So I never do sort of that thing that is you hear that's really cliche in a lot of popular mixes now, which is, oh, I'm gonna take the hook and I'm gonna chop it up and do little tricks with it and put it at the beginning so people will know that this is what it is. Or I don't like that. I feel like the song, if it's a song, it's not a choose your own adventure book. The song has to be, it's like, I don't believe if the bridge is at the end, I'm gonna take the bridge and put the bridge at the beginning. Well, the song record was never like that. There's a story being told there. Once that story is told, then I come in with all bells and whistles and chopping up vocals and doing crazy effects and things of that nature. Um, I also like to lay. I come from the James Brown thing where James Brown basically took the vamp and made the vamp the main part of the record, the part of the record that was never that people didn't consider to be anything but just like, okay, this is just like a loop to make that the groove, the bass part of the record, and then build upon top of that. Um, because you need something to catch to reel people in to bring them to the dance floor. Now, once you have this like this joy and repetition, so to bring these people to the dance floor, you have this thing that's locked them there, and then all of a sudden they hear this vocal come in from this artist that they know they don't like, but they're already there. Then you already got them, and that's the way of not tricking, but it's a way of getting people to open up to the possibilities of hearing records in a different way and hearing knowing that all music is relative. It all comes from the same place. You just need to have, I view it as a series of doors with locks and keys. You just have to know which key is going to unlock this door to bring this next musical experience.
Talk to us about your production tools. What do you use to produce your music?
I use as a digital audio workstation platform, I use Logic. I've used Digital Performer. I've used Pro Tools. The Logic just works. It's just what I use. But I consider them to all be really big tape recorders. They all basically are based on the same platform, but you know, some just work better for others. Logic works for me. I have a lot of keyboards and you know percussion around the house, and you know I'm not afraid to like you know use things in a way, things that aren't necessarily considered instruments, use them as instruments. I think Timberland is really good at that. You know, it's like I think that's why I always gravitate towards artists who also view their, especially singers like Monique. She views her, she doesn't see herself as a singer. She sees herself as an instrument. She uses her voice as an instrument. It's like when people like on the song "Poor People," someone's like, who sung the low bass part? I said she did. I said, you know, she views her voice as an instrument. I have a really interesting story about that record, by the way, if you want to hear it.
I do. I was actually going to ask you about that, so please tell us.
So when I was working on my first album, No Politics, I learned what I learned from working on that album is if you're making scratch tracks for singers to write to, they don't like a lot going on in the record because it becomes difficult to write to because you start writing to different parts, and you know. So I made this CD of tracks, and I gave the CD to Byron Stingley, and I gave it to Joy Caldwell and Monique. Well, they all, when they sent me back, you know, which tracks they worked on, which tracks they liked, they all wrote songs to this one particular track. But there was only one person who could win, and Monique won with Poor People. But Byron Stingley wrote Hate Won't Change Me to that music. And Joy Caldwell wrote What It Feels Like to that music.
Wow.
So I have them all singing their songs to what people now know as Poor People, to that backing track.
Wow. How did you meet Monique Bingham?
I met Monique Bingham through Ben Johnson, actually. And I really don't remember how we met. It's so odd. It's like she's one of the people who I work with that I just don't remember the day we met. Like I used to live on 30th and 8th Avenue in a studio apartment there. And in that apartment, I recorded Byron, Monique, Colton Ford, Monique and Colton Ford. They did a song together called Bluntly Speaking. Jason Walker, the first song I ever recorded with him, The Can't Stop, was recorded. He was in my hallway to my bathroom. Robert Owens, Frankie Knuckles came by my house and he dropped off J Dub's Delight because he wanted me to remix that. I used to have to tell Danny Crivet that you gotta have to get out your car because it looks like when you come to my house and I give you some music, it looks like we're doing a drug deal. And so you can't be doing that. He would pull up and roll the window down and I would pass the CD and I'd be like, this don't look right.
That's awesome. Tell us about one of my favorite tracks of yours, and there are many, is Hate Won't Change Me. Talk to us about that track.
Well, like I said, Byron wrote Hate Won't Change Me to the music of poor people. But it wasn't poor people until I heard Monique, what she wrote, and I was like, okay, this is your record. So once that happened, I had to make a new track for the record. And so I came up with 6 different versions. And Timmy was like, no, it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. And he's like, you have to give, he's like, you know what you need to do? Byron hasn't had a record that sounds like a house record in a long time. You need to give him something to strip back. And so basically, I started, because they always say, flattery is the highest form of copying or whatever is that phrase is the highest form of flattery. So when you start off making music, you tend to try to make stuff like the people who you like. So when I was making house music, I was trying to make stuff that sound like MK. So when I started off with, after getting that advice from Timmy, I went back and MK did this remix of she's an African artist. Her name escapes me, but he had this little line of and I was like, I always liked that. I would always find myself like just playing that little part. So I played that part, but then my hip hop, the stuff I learned from Dilla, started seeping into my head. I said, let me filter all this stuff down and make it sound sort of subby and very like there's upper body music and there's lower body music.
Explain that.
I always consider lower body music to be the funk. The stuff that's raw, the stuff that's gritty, and the stuff that's just like, as Spin says, ooh, it give you the hump. So like, for instance, Lisa Moody and Ultra Tay, they call my sound the Oompa Loompas. Because they say it sounds like the Oompa Loompas are gonna come out when my music comes on. I can always tell it's you. But so I gave it this really sub thing, but as far as percussion and drums, I always, learning from Dilla had, and liking James Brown, his percussion was in your face. The snares were just like, they were just really cracking. It's like, and that's how I approached that record. And I knew then when I did it, I was like, this is gonna be the track for this record. And I remember I took it after I finished it. I used to go to Shelter during the daytime. I would play records. I would play Timmy the music, right? Spinner was there that day. And I played it. Spinner looked at me and was like, what the hell is that? And that was, I didn't even have an album at that time, but we just said, this is from the forthcoming album.
Wow. How long did it take you to make that record?
That's still, well, if you want to consider all the 6 other versions of it, it took me a long time to get that record. But once I got settled on what everybody knows, it was like, I will say that record is the record that is the beginning of the Quentin Harris sound, is that record. The same with My Joy. My Joy was me just trying to show my mother what it was, me trying to be MK again, but it was me trying to be MK again, but it was my mother and father came to visit me because I put my foot down. I was like, y'all went to a family reunion and went past me and didn't stop and say hi. I'm not coming back home, so y'all come visit me. And so they came, and I was like, well, let me see what you do, what you work on. And at the time, I had, I know Danny Critter did an edit of music by Leela James, and on the flip side of that record was My Joy. And something just spoke to me. I have this affinity for people who when someone tells somebody they can't do something, or Simon Cowell, Jennifer Hudson, you're fat, you're this, you can't be this, you can't be that. I always gravitate towards those things because, maybe I used to be driven by the word no. That someone tell me I can't do something, it just really sets a fire underneath my ass and makes me want to a fault that I want to prove that, yeah, I can do this. Now what? So I started, making this record, and it turned out to be basically My Joy. Initially, it didn't have an organ solo at the end of the record. When I played it for Timmy, he was going nuts over it, and I just was like, oh, it's just another record. This is what I'm thinking. He's like, you should repeat this part and then play an organ solo there. And I literally had this little small MIDI keyboard, and I played that organ solo on that record at the shelter office on 39th Street.
Wow.
Yeah, they used to say to me, they used to want to keep me on airplanes because I will say a lot of, Ultra will tell you this too, she's like, a lot of my best work is done on the fly, or if I'm on a plane, or if I'm on a train. That's the one thing about production now, which is really great, that you can do it anywhere. And, technology is I feed technology with a long handled spoon. I have a career because of technology. So, I'm not going to be like, oh, technology bad. It's like, but I think my experiences growing up set the foundation for me to be able to know how to, they say when you don't have, you make do with what you have. Like traveling. I recorded traveling. I produced that record with an ASR 10. No Logic. No, I did that on an ASR 10. Cordell was in my living room / bedroom / kitchen / everything in the studio apartment on 30th. And he recorded that record with one of those cheap Radio Shack mics with the on and off switch. Sitting right next to me.
Wow.
I remember the Martinez brother asked me, how'd you know to put this in this record? How you know to do that? And I said, start with the sounds you want to end up with. I know it sounds easy to say that, but it's like, if I already know, like traveling was inspired by The Secret Life of Plants, the song The Secret Life of Plants. But these are fun, a few discoveries and find inside the secret life of plants. Stevie Wonder. No. It's all music is related.
how many unreleased tracks do you have?
Let me see. I'm sitting at my computer. I have a lot. There's a lot. And a lot of it's about to be released. Another thing when I left New York, I was becoming burned out. You know, I feel like creative people, we're like glasses. We're like a vessel. So, and when the vessel is empty, there's no creativity. So we have to have life experiences and pain and hurt and all kinds of things so that glass becomes full. And then when it becomes full, that's when all the creativity starts to come out. And in my life, it's always been 10-year increments. So when I moved to New York, the time I moved to New York, that was a 10-year increment. And then when all this stuff started happening at Shelter, and then that was another 10-year increment. So now I'm in that other 10-year increment where I have all this stuff. And it was a reason why I was just like, I know in this particular current climate of Spotify's and Track Sources and Soundclouds and all this stuff, that it's unfortunate that songs don't get longer shelf lives than they used to. So, and I know that I could put out, and this is another reason why people really haven't heard a lot from me. Another reason when I left New York, my sister had passed away and my father had passed away, all within months of each other. And then I had just put out the Sacrifice album, and then Aaron Carl died when I was on the road. So I had to be like this, on the road when I wasn't feeling. I had to do I remember I was in South Africa with me and Kerry Chandler on this Heineken tour, and I was just like, I really don't feel like doing any of this, but I had to I had to give the people there. They don't know what the hell's going on. They know they paid, and so after that was over with, I just was like, I need to decompress, and because I wasn't even getting a chance to grieve and get a chance to deal with normal life stuff. So I think this time around, and I've constantly always been making music, but I haven't been putting things out, especially in this new climate that I was talking about. It has to be like when I was putting out records, where it seemed like every other week there was a new record. It's like, because if I could put out a record today, but if I don't have anything else to follow it up with, people forget so quickly now. And so I have an arsenal of music because that I'm just going to start putting out, which gives me, it's like, as they say, it's not a passive income, but it's something that, this is constantly happening. This is something new, a remix, and then something that from my back catalog that people can't get anymore. Because there's a whole generation, a whole group of kids that hasn't heard half of my stuff. And, I shop for records just like everybody else does. And I know, and not to toot my own horn, but I'm about to toot it. I don't hear nothing like what I was doing. I don't hear anything like I was doing. And so everything is cyclical. everything goes in a circle. And so I have all these remixes that either never came out. I have stuff I did with her. I have I have all kinds of stuff. It's like I've just been sitting on it because I wanted to make sure that it's one thing to do remixes, but it's another thing to have your original work. I want to make sure that I had original work that, I've always been a champion for doing albums. An album for me is like a window into my life at that particular period in time. And to me, it's more of a complete thought. I don't care what anybody says. There's singles, that, whatever. This is the one thing this is my thing, and this is what I like. I like to do an album because I like to have a complete thought. It's like DJing someplace and playing for 2 hours. it's an incomplete thought to me, because some people can get on and they can catch you right off the back. I'm not that person. It's like, to me, it's like a conversation. It's like I'm having a conversation with them. And especially if it's a place I've never been before, it's like I'm trying to gauge the sound system, gauge where I can take them or where I can't take them. So by the time I get into the groove, it's like, okay, you're done. It's like, so that's another thing. I just wish, everything is moving so fast. Like, people are like, oh, well, you should be on Twitter, you should be on this, you should be on TikTok. I said, there's going to be something else tomorrow. I know about it. It's like when I make these comments on Facebook, because lots of my peers, we have arguments. They have arguments with me about this. And this is just me. I was like, if I have something to say, you'll hear from me. If I don't have anything to say, I'm just not going to be just shouting at the moon for no reason. It's like, I don't care if I was like out of mind. It's like, because at the end of the day, my music is speaking for me. I want my music to speak for me. Not, can I say something cheeky online to get people interested? It's like, no, I got here because of my music. I didn't get here because I was good at Facebook.
Let's talk about DJing.
Yeah, I'll get backlash over that one too.
Let's talk about DJing. You talked about, 2-hour set as an incomplete thought. How important is a residency in establishing a DJ's career?
A residency, as far as establishing a DJ career now, pre-COVID, it's not important. It's just like, there's some really great DJs out there who don't produce records. And I hate the fact that if you don't produce a record, you're not going to get heard. I really have a problem with that. Whereas some people may think I'm a producer turned DJ or vice versa. No, I just was doing all this stuff simultaneously at the same time. But you're always going to be better at something more than others. It's like when people say, oh, you should know how to multitask. There's no such thing as multitasking. You're just giving something else more attention, and this other thing is lacking. So I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. But I really feel that having a residency does more for you, especially in this particular era where everybody's attention span is so short. It's like, if you're doing a party and people like you, and they say you're doing this party monthly. Well, this party better happen the first Friday every month, or the first, because people don't want to think. And when it becomes routine for them, like I'll use Honey Dijon as an example. Honey Dijon was she had one of the best last residencies, in my opinion, in New York City. And I remember she used to always say, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with Hero Shows now. It's like, I said, honey, you have the one thing that I have lusted and coveted for the longest, is to be able to have a residency where you are playing every week. I said, you made an impact. I said, I remember going into this place and there were banquettes all over the floor. You turned this place into a proper dance club. I said, these people on the floor that come here, I don't care if it is free. These people remember you and they're going to go where the music is. So that's the other thing, when promoters remove the power from the DJs. So there's a few DJs that, need to be sliced down because they were just like really just out of control. But once that happened, it became a situation, and with clubs shutting down, it became everybody's fighting for scraps. And there's not enough venues. And then, it's difficult to operate and have a residency now. So, but in the age of COVID, everybody can, like, a lot of people ask me how come I haven't live streamed yet. The reason why I have not live streamed yet is because I want to make sure I don't have no technical difficulties. Because if they're talking about people on the news and their flowers in the back, in the back don't look right, they said the kids talk, and I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. So, and I want to be able to focus, put the amount of focus into it the way Spinner does, or the way Morales does. You know they're playing because again, you have to have that. That's one thing in this particular digital age, you have to be consistent. It don't matter if you put out records that people don't like. As long as you're consistent, you have to have that consistency.
True that.
And that's why I haven't live streamed yet. I'm not ready to commit to that consistency. Because I got stuff going on.
What's your definition of soulful house music?
Ooh, I never heard that term until I moved to New York. Yeah, I said it. I never ever, I was having this conversation with Ted Patterson. I said, Ted, I never heard the term soulful house music until I moved to New York. It was just house music or club music. It was never, this is soulful. I think as KO said on my album, whatever moves you, moves your soul, is soulful. And it's like I feel like genres are a form of like being in high school, and these are the jocks, and these are the preppy kids, and these are the nerds, and people, and it's become even more micro genre to the point where I think people use it. It's like everything is a la carte now.
Explain.
And now that everything is okay. When there used to be a time, like for instance, what would you call Missy Elliott's record, Get Your Freak On? What kind of record is it, genre-wise?
Damn.
What do people say when that's what they call it? It's a hip-hop record. That's right. What they call it.
Yeah.
They don't say it's an Indian, Bollywood, blah, 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 blah. It's like, and that's what I mean by a la carte. They've taken all these perceptions and minuscule and just, it's like micromanaging genres. I remember I was in Ibiza one year sitting at the table, and these guys from the UK, I was having this conversation about genres. I think they're, all these new genres every 5 seconds is, people want to feel like something is theirs. That's, it's like clothes. Oh, what color is your shirt? It's orange. What's it tomorrow? Oh, it's pumpkin. It's the same orange shirt, but in order to sell it, in order to sell the same thing that people have been getting, you have to give it a different name. I don't buy into that. So the term soulful is whatever, it does not compute to me. Because there are records like Arms Reg. People consider that soulful. There's some techno records that are soulful. It's like, it's just a term that, again, I never heard until I moved to New York.
Ibiza. Tell people what Ibiza is and its relevance for the music scene.
Ibiza is the Las Vegas of Europe. No, I'm just joking. No, Ibiza. Well, when I first started going there, it was still, some people will tell you that it's different, but it's just, for me, it was very magical. It was like going to, it was like, how you go to the Winter Music Conference and there's all this, so much going on. That's what it felt like. But it felt like it was more, it wasn't, you're hearing the best of the best in within all different forms and genres there, and the production. Oh God, I gotta call him back. It's Rasan Patterson, manager. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Has some other business. So basically, you know, it's the European mecca for all things dance music. That's how. Now, as of recent years, that may be a little different, but for me, when I first went there, was going there on a regular basis. That's what it was like for me.
When did you first go there, to Ibiza?
I first went there around 2000, around the time the No Politics album came out on Strictly Rhythm. I was going just a little bit before that. So, I mean, it was just like, it's also like the Winter Music Conference. It's like you're seeing all these people in the same room sometimes. It's like I'm in the hotel lobby with Dennis Ferrer, Sven Voth, and Loco Dice, and we're all sitting there having this conversation. You know, it's just, it's kind of like that. It's like, it's really great, and it's a lot of beaches there, even though most people cram themselves on those one or two major beaches there. But it's really a beautiful island. Not as beautiful as Greece, but it's great. Look, I'm realistic. I ain't got time to not be realistic. I'm getting too old to not be.
What is the Amsterdam dance event?
The Amsterdam dance event, it is basically, at first I viewed it as to be Europe's answer to the Winter Music Conference. But as I've been going more and more, I find it to be very much on the cutting edge of you know, all things club dance music, and not just like, not past, present, and future. There's lots of panels that deal with the business side in ways that I have not ever seen in the States, actually. I think a lot of that comes from basically, you know, dance music is, for the most part, has always been considered the bastard child of the music industry in America, whereas in Europe, you know, it's celebrated more. I mean, that's kind of changed in the past few years, but it's still but it's still, you know, it's still, I still think that even with the onset of so many ways people can get their music, I still think there's still you know, I still think there's that view of dance music that way here in the States. But I really love ADE. Ultra and we all did a party last year. It was just a deep sugar party in the past 3 or 4 years. And they're always really fun. And there's not a lot of pressure. And it's like, I don't feel like, you know, I need to, you know, go here to be seen, right? You know, it's like, I feel like I can actually go there and be, and learn a lot of things. And not just be party. Because I figure if you're gonna pay money and get on a plane and go to Amsterdam, you're gonna go there for something more than just party.
Talk to us about the business of music. You've put out a few albums. You've also been a DJ and producer. Knowing what you know now, how would you approach your career differently? That's part one. And then part two, what advice would you give the next generation of music producers like yourself, the 19-year-old Quentin 2.0 that's starting from scratch?
The music business is always has always been and always will be a business that can chew you up and spit you out. These are the negative things. Youth is typically valued. Also, those are two negative things. And there's always people who, as they say, those who can't teach. There's always those people who sit in judgment of talent that they don't have. Those are the bad things. The good things is a lot of that is changing, because we're in, I consider, the 80s of music again, where it's almost like there's so much going on because of technology, is that it's becoming hard for a lot of the old guard, as far as how the music business is, to keep up, unless they, do the whole thing. It's like, once they don't understand something, they buy it. That's just a corporate world. But I think that there's so many different outlets and vehicles for people to have their music be presented and heard. There's no excuse anymore. There's like, you don't have to, if going down this particular route is your way, and going down this route is not, we all go different directions to get to the same place. So there's not, there's so many different ways that we can utilize this business that is called music. It's like, for instance, just because this person uses these tools this way doesn't mean that that's the way you have to use them. You can use them in a way that's different, that works for you. It does, there's no template. Let's see. What would I tell my 19-year-old self who was wanting to get into music? I would say history is very important. You don't want to live there, but it's important to know why you're doing what you're doing, or why you have to always want to be learning. That's the one thing I would tell anybody who's, young and wanting to, and stick to your guns, but also be open to criticism, open to, just, you have to have an open heart and open ears.
What's next? Who would you like to collaborate with?
There's so many people. I would actually like to collaborate with a lot of my peers. I've had this idea of doing like an album of collaborations. With Louis, with, all these people who I've been listening to their music for years, and I would love to like work with some people. Like, Ultra and I did the Black Stereo Faith album, which is great. Which I just love making that album with her, because it just took me back. And then we were a band too, so it was great. There's gonna be some more of that. As that phone call was, that was Rasan Patterson's manager. We're finalizing I basically remixed this entire Heroes and Gods album that came out last year. And Rasan is a clubhouse head. And, he told me a story when him and Trina Broussard was in a club and heard Joy for the first time, and she didn't ever know anybody did a mix of the record. And she's like, wait a minute, that's me. So that's the next thing. That's the next thing that I have coming. I'm going to be releasing a lot of my back catalog digitally, so people can get it with the proper name credits.
There's a story there.
Next time for that story.
Okay. That'll be part two. Part two.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna, I have an instrumental album called Binary Code that and a covers album that I did. When my father passed away, I started writing down names of songs that the first time I ever heard them was through my father. So, and I started seeing how eclectic the list was, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and make a covers album with all these songs that from Tracy Chapman to to just the list goes on. So I started working on that, and I put it on the back burner to finish the Black Steel Faith album. So I have a lot of stuff that's getting ready to flood the market, as they say.
That's awesome. Anything else you want to cover that I didn't ask you about today?
No, you got my scroll today.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate.
Like, hear ye, hear ye.
No, thank you. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Manager back now.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Peace.